Joining us now to discuss this and more, we have Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff. He is the ranking member of the House Intelligence Committee. Good morning, Congressman.
Good morning.
Thanks to the New York Times, we have some more details in terms of what then President-elect was shown by the intel chiefs 2 weeks before his inauguration. And they really opened their files to him because they felt it was so important that he know about what Vladimir Putin had ordered. I mean, they had Vladimir Putin's fingerprints on these orders, and they wanted President-elect Trump to be able to fully digest this. And what they showed him, we now know, highly classified details, texts and emails from Russian military officers and information from an extremely highly placed source. Now, you'll remember, Congressman, that a year ago, in May of 2017, President Trump shared classified information in the Oval Office with Russians. Here's the report from then. President Donald Trump shared highly classified information with the Russian foreign minister and Russian ambassador to the U.S. in a White House meeting in May of 2017. So, where does that leave us today? Do you have any fear that President Trump, behind closed doors with Vladimir Putin, may have said something that he shouldn't?
Absolutely, and I think given the president's performance in the last week, let alone the last year and a half, it would be naive not to have that concern. I think these are the kind of extraordinary circumstances where we ought to subpoena the interpreter. We ought to bring the interpreter in behind closed doors and find out, did the president make concessions to Putin? Did the president share classified information with Putin? Did the president take other steps beyond those that he took so publicly to undermine the security of the United States? Was there, for example, a discussion of ignoring Article 5 of NATO, of Montenegro's situation? It certainly seems far from easy to imagine, or far from difficult to imagine, that this is what prompted this discussion of Montenegro recently. That's a high priority of Vladimir Putin's. And to have the President of the United States say, why should we risk people over Montenegro? That's exactly what the Kremlin wants to hear.
So listen, bringing in the interpreter, as you know, is controversial. It's a double-edged sword. And lots of people don't want to do it because they say that world leaders need to be able to speak freely to each other and not think that they're going to be outed by an interpreter in there who it's not their job to give context on what they heard. It's their job to verbatim tell the leaders what is being said. So do you see the downside to bringing in the interpreter?
You know, this is certainly not a broad policy I'd want to see happen all the time, but where you have the President of the United States basically saying, I don't want my national security advisor president, I don't want my Secretary of State president, I don't want really anyone as a witness other than the United States adversary, and then in public behave so inexplicably, I think those extraordinary circumstances warrant this extraordinary remedy. And under these circumstances, I think it's negligent for us not to find out.
Do you Democrats have any other recourse? If, for whatever reason, you get pushback and cannot bring in the interpreter, do you have any other plan for how to figure out what the president might have agreed to or shared in there?
Well, like a great many things here, we have a limited capacity to stop the president from doing things that damage the country as long as we're in the majority, in the minority. Now, if we're in the majority after November, then we have a whole different range of options to mitigate the damage as long as he's there. But unfortunately, no. And the minority, particularly in the House, where the majority rules everything and literally can make up the rules as they go along to ensure that they do, there are only so many options.
I want to ask you about this woman, Maria Butina, who's this foreign agent operating in this shadowy way in the U.S. She's now been charged, as you know. You sent this out, this tweet last night, and I want to read it to everybody. Maria Butina, a Russian national, has been charged with acting as a surreptitious Russian agent and establishing a secret back channel with the GOP through the National Rifle Association. More likely to come on this. No wonder GOP members of the House Intel Committee refused our request to bring her and others in. So hold on a second, Congressman. You knew about Butina and you tried to interview her and question her in front of your committee?
We certainly knew about her and part of the role that she was playing. We didn't know whether she was an agent of a foreign power. But certainly had deep concerns over her activities, of others that we had email correspondence with that were talking quite openly in that email correspondence about setting up a secret back channel through the NRA. We heard credible allegations that the Russians may have been funneling money through the NRA. So yes, we wanted to pursue this, but like many other things, when it got too hot, the Republican reaction was, we don't want to know. We'd rather not know. And indeed, even today, as we continue to bring in witnesses, the majority continues to call the witnesses who are coming before our committee and telling them, do not come in, don't tell the Democrats anything. That's the action of a majority that is burying its head in the sand and acting to protect the president rather than to protect the public interest.
But really, I mean, just to be clear, you're saying that your Republican colleagues on the committee called her and said, do not come in? I mean, how exactly did they block her sharing information with you?
Well, no, during the course of time when they were actively in the investigation, the majority that is, we said, let's bring in Maria Butina. Here are the circumstances. Here are the reasons why we should hear from her. Here are the reasons why we should hear from Paul Erickson, who was alleged to have been involved in setting up this secret back channel. The Republicans were unwilling. They said, no, we don't want to have them come in. We don't want to hear what they have to say. They wouldn't explain why, but it was very clear that anything that might tarnish the NRA, anything that might lead to discoverable evidence that might incriminate the White House or people around the president, they didn't want to hear. With respect to other witnesses who have shown a willingness to come in and have expressed that they will come in, what the GOP has done when they've learned those witnesses were coming to testify before the committee is they've now affirmatively called those witnesses to say, please don't come and talk to the we'd rather they don't know since we don't know.
Congressman Adam Schiff, thank you very much for all